Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to LitBlock. No, you are not seeing things. You are seeing somebody a little new on your screen today, and that's because there's a little bit of role reversal going on. I'll introduce myself quickly and then get everybody up to speed. So my name is Tanya Ghans, and I am the editorial director of PD Essential Books. And I have the privilege today to be interviewing Patty McGee on her very latest book entitled Writer's Workshop Made Simple, 7 Essentials for Every Classroom and Every Writer. And again, I am so honored to have the privilege. Patty, thank you for showing that book right now. Hopefully everybody will get their hands on it as soon as possible. I also don't need to tell this audience, but I will, but you probably know, Patty is one of the most sought after consultants across the globe, from her hometown of New Jersey all the way to Abu Dhabi. She believes, like all of us, that the magic really happens when teachers and children work together to discover who they are as writers. And I can say firsthand, I've watched how a child's inner writerly life becomes visible when Patty begins to work with them. And it's really, it feels magical, but this book is going to show you that there are actually clear, concrete steps that you can take to have the same experience with your students every day. And if I can just end with a few more kudos to Patty's really awesome work over her many years of experience. She is a recipient of the Milken Educator Award. And I believe, Patty, let me know if I'm wrong, this is your second book. Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy that the second one is with us at PD Essentials. So I am just gonna jump right in and start the conversation. So we know that the best educational books survey the landscape and look for what might be holding up the learning and tries to offer a solution. So Patty, can you tell me, what did you notice in the field that made you say this book at this time?
Well, first of all, thank you for having this conversation with me, and thank you for all the love you put into this book to make it happen. It's just been such an honor for me to be able to work with you, Tanya, and to extend our work into this conversation. So just wanted to start off with some gratitude. And
thank you.
And one of the things that I've noticed this is coming up to my 27th year as an educator, and the past 15 or so of those years, I've been working with both grownups and kids in the classroom and all things literacy. And one of my first passions when I first started out, someone introduced me to Writer's Workshop, and I was like, oh my word, this is the answer. This is what I've been looking for. I just didn't know that this practice existed, and this framework existed. So back in the mid 90s, when I discovered this and started to pull it into practice in my own classroom, the things that I saw were amazing that students were doing. And then just because it was my passion from the start, I've really been taking this on, Writer's Workshop and many other literacy practices, but specifically Writer's Workshop for our conversation. And because it's been so many years, there's a lot of things that I worked through that were hard. And one of my favorite quotes comes from Oliver Wendell Holmes, and he says, "I'm looking for the simplicity on the other side of complexity." So basically, like, what can we do that can simplify our instruction, that once we work through the complex parts, what are the simple nuggets that we can hold on to that will keep our instruction strong? And so I have been partners with other educators in that journey of trying to find, in Writer's Workshop specifically, what are the nuggets that can streamline and create the most effective writing instruction possible. And because of all of that experience, and I bring all of these teachers who I've worked with, and all of the students who I've had the honor to learn from, that's what I brought to this book. Writing instruction can be really complex. Writing instruction can be really difficult. I mean, it's just one of those things that we have been taught as educators to look at student writing and correct it. And that's like our main form of teaching. But what are some other ways to make that happen? And that's what this book is all about. So this book now, because it's been 25 years in the making for me, and also because I've seen the simplicity on the other side of complexity that we can bring to our writing instruction. And this book really helps narrow that down. It tells us what are the 7 things that we need to keep our writing instruction strong and effective and student-centered. So that, in a nutshell, that's how we got here in the past quarter century.
I love that term you use, the simple nuggets, and you keep coming back to the idea of simplicity, which is important to keep separated from simplistic, right? I mean, what you've done is you've taken something that is difficult for a lot of teachers to wrap their arms around because it can be so subjective, and you really are having this shape children conversation by conversation if you're following this model. So I do agree that the best practitioners, their first job is to make the work something that people can process and feel really successful about, because we know success begets more success. And so that's another reason why this book is so exciting, because you really do give teachers a launching pad to do this work and feel confident in it. So absolutely, the complex made simple is what we really strive to do.
Absolutely.
And what you've done. And so, okay, so in keeping with that, let's think about these 7 essentials. Did you just throw them up in the air and wherever they fell down is how they landed in the book, or is there a particular order to these? And of course, I'm being a little facetious.
Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely an order. And that order actually mirrors what I've come to discover over the years of the process we all follow as educators in really learning about Writer's Workshop. So it's almost like a learning plan in the pattern that I've seen across the year or years when someone is studying a Writer's Workshop approach. And it starts with just grounding in our values, like what matters most to us in writing instruction. And that's where that first essential comes in, where we're thinking about, what is it that we want to focus on because it benefits student writers so much. And really in that essential, I turn to Stephen Graham and his crew for all of their research around writing instruction. So it's not just Writer's Workshop, because sometimes Writer's Workshop has a bad name in the field, that it's something that, oh, we did that a long time ago, or that was something that's come and gone. But Writer's Workshop is a name for something that is based on the research that's out there of what students need in the classroom of all ages. It's what learners need. So we can have a workshop in any setting. I just happen to be talking about writing right now. And then as a teacher who is holding a workshop, we just naturally first ground in what's most important here. What are the priorities? What is it that's important for students, like time to write, ongoing feedback, and so on. And then from there, what do we need to put into place in our classroom environment? So how do we set up the space, whether it's virtual space or physical space or both? And then from there, how do we structure our day-to-day experiences? And then what does that look like across time with the writing process? Once we've gotten through those concepts and really have embraced those, it's much easier then to go into the harder concepts of becoming more of a mentor rather than a corrector or fixer, to think about goals and strategies, and then finally to think about partnerships. So over the years, that was my learning. I started with like, what am I doing and why am I doing this? And then how do I need to set up my classroom and structure my day? And then once I had that down, I was able to learn about goals and mentoring and strategies and partnerships and the writing process and all that comes along with it. And then I found, you know what, I'm not the only one who learns in this way. that many different places that I've had the pleasure of serving, we have found, oh gosh, this will be a perfect way to unfold our learning around Writer's Workshop. So yeah, that's why I chose those essentials and in that order. But I also just want to say, this book teaches us what we don't have to do also in the classroom. Because sometimes in writing instruction, it gets so muddied. Like as if like, you know, teaching is hard enough and we're constantly feeling like we're spinning plates. And what is it that we don't have to do because it's not effective in the classroom? So when we boil it down to the 7 essentials, if it's not within those 7 essentials, then we want to reflect and say, is that a practice that really is impacting student learning? And if it isn't, does it belong here still? So one example of that, which I've alluded to a few times, is coming in and directly correcting student writing as a form of feedback. We come in, we fix writing for students, and then, I don't know, for the longest time, I thought of that as instruction. And then I was really confused why I didn't see as much growth in my students as I was putting in their correcting of their writing. And so I realized that that practice isn't one that is essential. So what is essential? And that's where we narrow this down. So it's a really helpful tool, this book, to not only plan out say a learning progression for educators as they're embracing, revising, or in some way enhancing their writing instruction, but also deciding what doesn't belong in this writing time. What doesn't need to be here? What is it that maybe I've been just doing habitually that isn't effective for students? So that's how we got to the 7 essentials.
So many things in what you said are so true, especially for anybody who's spent any time in the classroom, but really in any field. So one thing I'm hearing is the building block nature of these 7 essentials. We really start with the, that widest concentric circle, and then we just keep getting, more narrow and more granular, but all along the way, and I can tell you this because I've read the book in depth, nothing ever becomes hard. Nothing ever becomes, I don't understand it. It's always because of the progression and the building, you feel ready for the next step as you get to it. So that's definitely one thing I want to underscore. And I also was recently reading about a term I believe is called disimplementation, which is this idea of review your practices and let's pull out the things that aren't working anymore. Like they're having that as a part of a consistent review, because you're right, there are things that we all do that are just become habit, but are they helpful for us? So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So I think you alluded to earlier that Writer's Workshop has been around for a long time, maybe 40 years or so. And people, as with most terms, once they get out into the world, have their own definition of it. And those definitions and understanding, can vary. I think people get a sense that it's a certain, philosophy around how to teach writing. Your book also not only, I believe, went in to distill what are the most important and effective practices in Writer's Workshop, but wanted to respond to how Writer's Workshop has evolved over time, because most ideas and concepts do. So can you talk a little bit about what was new in your learning and what readers can expect to find about how you're addressing advances in this philosophy?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me that question, because it's one of my favorite reflection points as I look back on my professional life over the past 26, 27 years. I was lucky enough to learn about Writer's Workshop from our founding, or let's just say the founders of it. So, Don Graves and Don Murray, I never saw them in person, but I read what they were putting out in my early days. And then I learned from amazing people like Catherine Bomer and Carl Anderson and Georgia Hurd. And, I just was a groupie in learning about evolving my practice, my writing practices based on so many of their experiences and guidance. And at the same time, noticing and taking like a reflective stance in my own instructional practices and noticing what's working and what's not, and what I can do to revise that. So I feel like in this book are the concepts that ground the workshop, that are true to workshop no matter how long it is around or will be around. And then also ways that I was able to refine my instruction because of the troubles that I was having. So let me give you an example. So we know that side-by-side feedback, whether it's small group or one-to-one, has a huge impact on student learning. And that's not just a workshop thing, right? Like that's formative assessment that can double the rate of student learning. That comes from Black and Williams meta-analysis of formative assessment. And so when we have that side-by-side or small group conversation with writers, we are accelerating their learning. But here was the problem for me. I would be meeting with small groups or one-on-one, and it became like tutoring sessions. So I would spend 25 to 30 minutes of my whole entire writing block and only meeting with a few kids and giving feedback on like everything I could possibly think of at that time. And so I had to decide, like, what am I going to do here? What is it that I can create that's going to give me the time to meet with students, but also meet with many students so that I have some type of contact with students at least daily, if not a sit down, if not a small group. And I found that goals help me do that. So having a goal helps me narrow down what I'm looking for. So I can stay really deep within that goal. So if it's something like Writers Revise, I can look just for the revision techniques that students are using, and I put other things to the side for now, instead of giving feedback on everything. So that goal made a huge difference for me in giving feedback.
Teachers everywhere are going, oh, because they know that, how do I get to every child in enough time and give them what they need? And how do I know what are the right decisions to make? And you just outlined that so well. And it's even more so in the book, but talk about meeting a real need of teachers on the ground. How to get conferencing done efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I model that for teachers, where I'm giving feedback, I start with a goal in my mind, and then I model a strategy for a student. Teachers go, oh my word, I think I've been overthinking this the whole time. That's what I mean by the simplicity on the other side of complexity is, wow, okay, I just need to take a breath and just use these very simple and powerful elements. And now I see the growth, and also I can feel a little more on top of things, I guess is a great way to say it, because it's not like I'm looking at absolutely everything and everyone's writing all the time. I am using a lens, and the students are using the same lens too, to keep them growing and learning, builds agency. So really the book is what was hard for me, what was hard for colleagues that I was working with, and then what did we do to work through those hard parts? And that's really what this book has been. So it's kept the values of really that workshop approach, because it's so student-centered and so responsive, while also bringing in the parts that can make this instruction easier and more impactful.
Okay, so Patty, who is this book for? Can the new teacher use it just as well as the seasoned teacher? Do they have to be steeped in writer's workshop already? Who's it for?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking that question, because first of all, I want to say you don't even have to be a teacher of workshop to learn from this book. I started first, as I mentioned earlier, with those huge research base that comes from Stephen Graham over the past couple of decades. And he doesn't outwardly say workshop is a practice that, that he is the head of or he is condoning. He is simply saying, here are the things that you need instructionally for students to thrive in writing. And all of those are within this book. So even if a workshop setting is not something that teachers are interested in putting into practice, What we are looking at here are 7 essentials that are research-based.
Mhm.
So it's for any teacher. And then I was also thinking for both new and more seasoned teachers of workshop. So if you're brand new to workshop, following this book in the order that it's laid out is a great way to go. If you're a more seasoned workshop teacher, then the writing process chapter, the mentoring chapter, or the mentoring essential, I should say, the goals and strategies, and the partnerships. Those are the chapters that I found that I did the most learning with more seasoned teachers when we were working on that. Those were the harder parts. So it's really for everyone in many ways, but it's also, it can be a choose your own adventure kind of book, in that picking the essentials and deciding which essentials you're going to work on, which essential will be the chapter that you'll spend the time on and reflect and use. It's also great, in my opinion, for groups of teachers that are looking to study something together. So if they're a group of more seasoned teachers, they might, read those chapters together where they are using goals and strategies. One of my favorite parts too in here, because I just find student writing to be absolutely one of the most magical, delightful, brilliant things that I see in the classroom. And it's chock full of all different aged writers and their writing samples. So sometimes, every teacher of any grade level will just enjoy student writing the way that we can in our own classrooms, but then also, into the book and seeing what little ones create in a workshop setting, and bigger ones, like there's the literary essay writer's notebook that's just like beyond amazing. So I think it's for everyone. So whether you are new to this work, whether you embrace a writer's workshop, whether you're seasoned in terms of writer's workshop, or you're just in love with student writing, this is a great book for that.
Yeah. And just to keep going on a piece of again, what you will find in this book is you'll get everything from the tools to have right by your side to help you do this work, tools from a Post-it to the certain kind of chart paper, all of that Patty has teased apart and really thought about what really helps you get the work done, all the way to what she was speaking about before, which is conferring and how to do that well and how to do that focus and have a plan for that kind of work. It's chock full of tools that you can actually use to really look at your classroom through that writerly lens and see what's working well for you, what are some challenges. Super, super practical book. We really cannot say that enough. I feel like I could ask you so many more questions, but I have one last one for now. And we all know that equity has become a really big term in today's world. And again, equity is one of those words that you can have many people defining in a lot of ways. And there are lots of different lenses you can use to think about equity. So can you just say a little bit about how, and I know how important that is for you, as you are a strong believer in giving children what they need, meeting children where they are.
Yeah.
How does this book support your understanding and belief of equity for children?
So I think we could talk about that for another half an hour, but I'm going to narrow it down to 2 things. First, the practices, the 7 essentials, support student voice and choice. So it values students, their ideas, their humanity, their experiences, their knowledge, and all they are, even their challenges. And that's one of my favorite phrases from Brene Brown is, we're here to show you how to use your strengths to meet your challenges. Like I can't think of anything, well, I'm sure I can think of more equitable things to say, but that's a big one. So that we are supporting student voice and choice. There's agency in this experience for young writers. It's not a fill in the blank kind of writing experience. It is one where students are at the center, which to me is equitable education. And the other part of this book that I think of in terms of equity is that one of my commitments as an educator is to constantly outgrow myself, to constantly be learning, because I believe that every student deserves a teacher who is constantly learning.
Mhm.
And with this book, we can find validation in the things and the practices and parts that we are going to keep within our classrooms. And we can also start to rethink and revise what can make us even stronger. So with those two parts of student-centered voice and choice and ever-evolving instructional practice, I think that begins to build that equitable experience for all students.
Thank you so much. Well, I mean, there you have it, listeners. So 7 Essentials Writers Workshop Made Simple. I said that in a bit in reverse, but Patty, if you could show us the book cover one more time so we can see it. Beautiful cover.
Isn't it beautiful?
Impossible to miss. Get your hands on it right now at Amazon. It's available for you to buy. And it's for all writing teachers. So let's say that again. It's not just for Writers Workshop. The book is embedded in practices that work writ large. So if you're teaching writing next year in K-5, K-6, and maybe even beyond, this is a book you really do want by your side. And I'll also say that part of our PD Essential series is that we create study guides to accompany these books to really help facilitate bringing this work to your particular school environment. So you have a chance to practice, hopefully with colleagues, really talk through and think about what is it going to take to get writing great every day in our room. So look for that as well. The 7 Essentials, Writers Workshop Made Simple, 7 Essentials for every classroom, every writer study guide, which will be out shortly. Patty, thank you so much for letting me take the microphone for the day. But it's just been such a pleasure to talk to you. And even though I've read the book before and I have been immersed in it, hearing you talk about it again has just revived why PD Essentials said, this is a must-do book. It's a must-have for teachers. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya, always.
Okay. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. And Patty will be back on the right side the next time you see her. Take care.